The hosts of bracketology are experts in nothing. They claim no advanced knowledge or profound insights. Instead, they are just three judgmental idiots who really like to bloviate their own opinions whenever given the chance. Take what they have to say with a grain of salt, or not at all. You'll probably be better off that way.
Media has gotten to an age where things have started to come into public domain recently. Mm-hmm. So a few years ago, talking about spoopy season, there was a movie that came out called Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Came out like the year that Winnie the Pooh went into public domain. Mm-hmm. And it was supposed to be a horror movie with Winnie the Pooh.
They were clearly working on it ahead of time. They knew that domain was coming.
1,000%.
Yeah, they were excited for it.
There was a new trailer released recently for, I believe it's a short film that is Peter Pan's Neverland, which again is a horror movie of a public domain figure, Peter Pan.
More than likely going to be more in line with what the books are like than what the Disney version was.
Much more likely. So the question becomes, what public domain character would you want to see in a horror movie?
Damn, we got to think of like old shit.
So, I mean, a couple things that have recently come into public domain. Steamboat Willie.
Mm-hmm. I think that's too easy of the answer.
Wizard of Oz.
That would be a dope-ass horror movie. Everything about the Wizard of Oz could be fucking terrifying if done correctly. Think about it. Like, the Tin Man doesn't have a heart, and he's trying to get yours. The lion.
Yeah, like all the characters are turned into something going after Dorothy instead.
Well, do you do it as that, or do you do it as like Dorothy is the ringleader for these, three serial killers that are attempting to? I don't know.
That's a different, unique. She's like a cult leader for the three of them.
Yeah, she's like a cult leader almost. They think that she's a magical being from another world. She's just ran with it because she's a psychopath.
And the Wicked Witch would actually be the good person, but they label her as a witch as part of the cult mentality.
Oh God, now we might be getting a little political with it. We can make a political statement with this movie.
Hey, it's a possibility. I think there are other ones that are a little like easy, right? Alice in Wonderland is public domain.
Sorry, jumping back. What about one where the Wicked Witch is just winning? Like, just change the outcome. Like, one by one. Like, make it a horror movie with the Wicked Witch being the antagonist. And she's just picking them off one by one.
So you just turn the contrast on the video camera for the Wizard of Oz up to like 11 so that you can see all the people, but it's so dark around them and people start disappearing.
Yeah, she just picks. They're aware of the threat. They meet each other early in the film and to establish their trek along the yellow brick road, and then she catches wind of it, and one by one takes them out.
They get to Munchkin Land, and it's just a
desolate
graveyard.
wasteland. She's destroyed it all.
Well, and how terrifying the flying monkeys would be.
Yeah, you could make. Yeah,
those flying monkeys are terrifying to begin with.
Hey, TM. We gotta, guys. We might have to take a few weeks off in bracketology and write this script
and write a movie.
Yeah,
just in preparation because that's not. Is it in domain now or is it coming soon?
It is in public domain. It is in public domain.
It's open.
We got to write this.
So what else would you like think of? Like I said, Alice in Wonderland, I think is another just kind of like too easy almost. But what if you just followed like the Cheshire Cat as like a voyeur who watches
the Cheshire Cat like kill everybody?
Or it just watches the murderers happen throughout Wonderland.
And it's helping detectives, Mad Hatter and Hare try and solve the murders, but he's being very cryptid about it.
So here's my thought: the Mad Hatter is the serial killer.
I mean,
and the Queen is trying to figure out who the serial killer is, but the Mad Hatter is very elusive, and you don't find out like the screen twist, right? You don't find out that it's the Mad Hatter until after he's won.
I feel like people would just assume It's the Mad Hatter from the start. Like I would. I mean, I feel like the Mad Hatter is the easy answer to that question.
Yeah. I mean, if you did it that way, that's why you almost have to flip it on its head.
I
right?
feel like if you really want to flip it and get somebody that's going to be not suspected, you got to get that stoner caterpillar. Nobody's going to suspect the stoned caterpillar of being a serial killer. He doesn't have the motivation. He's too tired. He's hungry. He's looking for something to eat.
Yeah.
He's turns out he's eating their friends. He's got
That's what happens when he gets the munchies.
he's got murderous Alice in Wonderland murderous munchies.
Time to sit down for tea.
All right, so that's 2 scripts we have to write.
Okay.
Guys,
So
we're on a roll.
There are some other public domains. So I was looking this up earlier, but I just had to pull it up. Robin Hood is public domain. King Arthur, Merlin are public domain. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Tarzan, Long
Tarzan.
John Silver.
What about Tarzan, like, is the killer and you were just stranded in the jungle trying to escape? It's like Predator, but with a almost naked dude.
One where Tarzan is like he's been fully influenced in a realistic way about the apes, or by the apes. So like when rescue teams or whatever come looking for him, he does not have a curiosity. He's just straight aggressive with them. And it's like the people that are looking for him versus him and the monkeys. Like they're going through a dark jungle and there's just monkey eyes looking out at them, watching them go by. I like that.
A little bit terrifying.
I would say I can already sense Matt peeing himself a little bit just thinking about that scene. Just picturing it.
That one would. I'd be on their side is the problem. Get the colonizers. Let's do it.
But man, that right there is a jump scare gold mine. Though you put those guys walking through dark rainforest looking for this, lightning flashes. There's nothing there. A second later, lightning flashes, and Tarzan's just like poof, outside of the rain.
At some point,
oh man,
you have to have
be the opening scene of the movie. Like
bruh,
the
TM. We got
3 scripts.
At some point in there, you do have to have Tarzan's love interest, right? Like clearly this is going to be what snaps him out of the. She's
the thing that saves the whole day. Absolutely.
Yeah, but
she comes in act.
That's what I'm saying, Matt.
You got to subvert expectations here. She comes in, they build her up.
Think she's gonna do it.
Oh, so I was gonna bring her in Act 3 to finish the movie, but you're saying bring her in Act 2, build her up.
In Act 1, build her up.
Build her up into Act 2. Midway through Act 2, you take her out, and then it moves.
No. That's the climb. That's going from 2 to 3. Yeah. That's your transition.
I disagree, but because here's the thing: so you have her be the red herring for the first half of the movie, and then you have her dad be the one that then turns and hunts Tarzan. In the end of the movie, he's standing over him with a rifle.
And retribution.
Yep.
Okay.
No, it's like if I'm gonna write a movie, I want the bad guy to win. Like some of my favorite movies, the bad guys win.
But now hold on now. He just said that you got Jane's dad standing over Tarzan, gun pointed, fade to black. He never said bang. There's always room for sequels, brother. This is Hollywood. Nobody's ever really dead. Very next move, Tarzan 2 picks up immediately where the first one left off.
And this
and
is
Tarzan
how it
grabs the gun, puts a foot in his gut, and flips him over.
You're missing it. Hold on. It starts Tarzan 2, right? It opens up with the gun in his face, and then you just see a glowing circle go around outside of Tarzan, and he falls through a time portal.
Are we putting him in the Marvel universe now?
Did Doctor Strange just saved him?
I thought that was the goal of the exercise.
to get us sponsored by Disney or sued by Disney.
I bet there's a Tarzan Marvel crossover somewhere. I bet that comic exists. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Bracketology, the podcast that definitively decides all things tournament bracket style. I am the thing under your bed, Scott.
I am the first to hide, Matt Robinson.
And I'm the ghoul, Dan Default.
This week we continue our horror icon championship with the Spoopy 16, the southern side of the Spoopy 16. We've got slashers and creatures on the docket. What matchups do we have to look forward to, boys?
Well, on the slasher side, we have Michael Myers versus Freddy Krueger. This is like the 80s off for horror movies. And then we have Ghostface versus Jason Voorhees. This pretty stacked bracket right there, fellas.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people in that, or icons in that particular division that are, I don't know, maybe some of the most decorated serial killers in all of cinema history.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out here and say we've disagreed on numerous things in the past, SpongeBob and Bob Barker. But I'm going to throw it out here and say my money's on this category right here to be where the winner is living right now. If I'm just throwing it out there, those four,
I mean,
those are juggernauts.
It's a possibility
for that whole category.
It is a possibility, but on the other side, in the creatures, we have some other very iconic icons. We got to get
there's got to be another word for that.
Iconic imagery.
Creature, just sure, yeah.
So iconic creatures.
You've got The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing versus Slender Man. No,
Mr. Slenderman.
He has one name. And then The Other Mother from Coraline versus the Xenomorph. And I mean, those as well. The Thing, Slender Man, Xenomorph, Coraline, like those are all iconic franchises, let alone the actual characters themselves and what they bring to the table. So overall, I think we've got a lot of heavyweights.
Absolutely. Before we get into it, guys, I do want to take a quick second and just remind everyone, while you're here listening to us right this moment, swipe your Spotify into the background, pull up Facebook, pull up Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, pull up TikTok, pull up YouTube, follow us on those channels, like, subscribe, whatever. That stuff helps out greatly. That being said,
turn to the person on the subway next to you and show them the episode.
Yes. Yeah. Share it with friends, like for real. That helps a lot. All that being said, gentlemen, what side do we want to start? Actually, I'm going to throw my vote out here. We'll do this. I know I do that every time, but I want to make it democratic. I'm just going to tell you guys vote. Where do you want to start?
Creatures.
Matt, where do you want to start?
I'm good with either.
You're indifferent. I also want to start creatures, so let's go with
abstain.
That. You would have been outnumbered anyway.
That's generally how I work.
All right, first up, The Thing versus Slender Man.
All right, so The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, right? This is we talked about it the last time that he was up in the bracket, and really an inspiration for what has become a lot of the, amorphous, invisible fear, the invisible horror that's outside the tent. That kind of a thing, versus something that is very modern. Like Slender Man is still relatively recent. Remember, created in 2009? I think we learned, Scott.
I looked it up, but that was like it's been a long time since we've recorded, so I don't remember. But yeah, it was something like that. It was 2008.
2009.
So I mean, one that is 60 years old almost, and I'm overestimating there. Versus one that is 15 years old. So that alone, I think, may weigh one more than the other. But I think that the thing that Slender Man has going for it, it has actually inspired people to murder for it. An online, completely fictional creature has been able to influence not just pop culture, but actual culture to get creepy little girls to murder each other.
Man, mental health in this country is really a concern, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, that's all true. It is. Slenderman has had a huge impact in the short time that it's been around. But I feel like the thing is such a not just a kind of iconic in its own right, but also like its impact on the genre. I think there's a ripple effect there that can't be ignored. And I think again, me personally thinking about the horror side of it, I've said it before in other other brackets and other episodes of this one. Anything where the main power of the bad guy is subterfuge, right? If it can appear to be something different, if it can shapeshift or possess or whatever, like that's extremely scarier to me. And so the thing being that, and the fact that you could be in a room and not know that the thing's right there with you is pretty horrifying.
Yeah.
I think for me, the thing as a movie was pretty revolutionary when it came out back in 1982, which was not fucking 60 years ago, Matt. But I don't know how iconic the actual villain, the thing, is, right? I think the movie is iconic, and that to an extent makes, you know, the character a little bit iconic, but I don't think it was the character that made the movie, if that makes sense. Slenderman came out, you know, what was it, 15 years ago? And it started on the internet, and I think the way that it has grown has made itself iconic, and the image of Slenderman is creepy, right? Just a tall, lanky shadow figure that's going to come kill you.
Yeah, there are. So I was looking up the abilities of the Slender Man, and I think that there are a couple additional arguments. Like, I do think this weighs very heavily for the Thing, but just to play Slender's advocate a little bit here, there's apparently Slender Man has multiple abilities. Slender walking is a thing.
What the fuck is slender walking?
Essentially,
walking but lanky.
essentially,
It's really
yeah,
big stride.
Camouflage, mind control.
No, wait, hold on. You didn't explain what it is.
Slender walking, it says, is an ability of the Slender Man.
Oh,
I thought that said men, Slenderman. That allows him to appear and disappear at will, granting him his omnipresent-like movement, allowing him to teleport from one point to another virtually anywhere, instantly, and often without any physical indication of the teleportation.
So why the fuck not just say teleport?
yeah, that's not. That's already an existing thing.
I don't know. But he's also got camouflage. He can blend with the environment, which I think we kind of saw. Mind control, which we, you know, I'd mentioned kind of earlier with the real life inspiration. But here's one, Scott: impersonation. Rarely seen in the contemporary mythos. I like how it says contemporary mythos. Early mythos accounts show Slender
Makes us feel
Man's
old, doesn't it?
right. So his ability to impersonate or mimic the voice and tone of a person in order to get to a victim. Specifically used for luring a child or victim out of a safe area.
Yeah, you hear your parents' voice in the woods or whatever.
But it's just the voice, right?
Yeah.
He can't like morph into that person.
Do not believe so. Telepathy, pain reduction, prolonging death. And then he's got slender sense. That's fun.
I'm assuming that's like Spidey sense, but because it's in Slenderman, they're going to call it Slender sense.
Kinda. He can sense when his victims are near at all times. So again, I think that it has like some powers going for it.
How
but
much of that was the description of his character in Dead by Daylight?
I don't know.
Because that's what that sounded like.
Because this is the slenderman.fandom.com. He has his own wiki.
Of course.
And I mean, it talks about the different games that he's in. I did not see Dead by Daylight in here, though.
Oh, I'd be surprised if he wasn't, but I don't know. But you just, Dan, I think you made a good point that the movie The Thing is iconic, But The Thing, perhaps not so much.
Yeah, agreed.
I, in
I mean, of course you would agree. It was your point I was repeating back to you.
I
I
kind of
agree. I did make a good point.
Look, I'm agreeing with the smartest person on this podcast. So
I think the other thing that the Slender Man has going for it, and we talk about like iconography, is you guys know those morph suits,
yeah,
you know, like I
I know
feel
where you're
like
going.
that really got popularized with the idea of Slender Man, right? Just a monochromatic being that hides in the woods, especially white or black or something like that. I feel like that really increased in popularity because of the Slender Man mythos. I feel like I've talked myself into potentially looking at having a what would be the right word for it? Future of the genre continue in on in this bracket.
So let me ask you this, Matt. Of these two, like there are what, two Slenderman movies?
I don't know.
I think there's two. Between one of those two movies and The Thing, which one would you least want to watch?
Oh, Slender Man.
Okay.
Like I feel like the thing is it would help me to be able to watch the thing knowing what happens, right? Like I know what happens in the thing. I've listened to people talk about it 100 times. Um, with Slender Man, it is very much reliant on the jumps and the surprises
Yeah.
to really cause fear, while the thing really builds on the psychological terror.
I have to dispute one thing you said there a moment ago, Matt. I don't think that the shoulders of the future of the horror genre, I don't think it's going to rest on Slenderman's shoulders. One, they're far too narrow. Two, I think there are other things on this bracket that are going to have a greater impact on the future of the horror genre. I think Slenderman is a very niche thing that had a flash in the pan success, and like most other internet memes, is is fading in relativity.
I mean, it's a possibility. I think the other argument that I have on behalf of the Slender Man is 2009, right? Kind of gets created, and then people run with it, and then there start being reports on the internet for, I don't know, a few years at least of sightings, right? Or of, Slender Man's talking to me, or
Yeah,
what have you. Plus, then around the same time, I feel like, I don't know how much of it was inspired by, there were a bunch of creepy things popping up across the country, right? I don't know if y'all remember, I believe it was Wisconsin had a clown epidemic for
yeah.
like 6 months.
The clowns in the woods at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember that.
And I think partly that was kind of inspired by this whole, oh, look, I saw Slender Man in the fields. Plus there is the oh shit,
Mhm.
I had another point and now I can't remember what that was.
All right,
I
I think we've been talking about this one enough. Let's do
Yeah.
it.
all right.
Hey, Matt, if at any point in the rest of this episode you do remember what your second point is, I
Yeah.
invite you to bring it up then.
I will,
no matter what we're talking
what
about.
you say. I don't give a shit about your invite. It will happen whether you want it or not.
Perfect. What's your vote?
I do think that I'm going to vote for Slender Man.
You've talked yourself into it, huh?
I have kind of talked myself into it because I do think that while it doesn't have very wide shoulders, I think that it is at the very least a modern day inspiration to other horror icons as we move forward.
Okay. I can't imagine a reality where 10 or 15 years from now, the great horror directors say, I was inspired by Slenderman. it doesn't ring as that impactful of a film to me. I think the character and the ethos about it, outside of its theatrical experience, is definitely very interesting, and like its origin is. But I think the movies, I don't know that it carries the weight. The Thing, as a character, I see where you're coming from, Dan, that it's not as iconic as the idea of the movie, but the movie is the Thing. I mean, it's about the Thing.
Yeah.
And its capability to, again, you think about the being trapped in a space with a set number of people and you have no idea who's safe and who isn't, is terrifying. So for me, the more horrific and the more iconic is both the Thing.
So, split decision. Okay.
Oh man, I went second, so you had to be the tiebreaker. Darn.
I think for me, the iconic level of both of these competitors is about the same, and I think it's for different reasons. The Thing has been burning slower, but burning a lot longer. And then, Scott, to your point, I think Slenderman was a flash in the pan that is dying out. I think that it had its day, but just like Vine, it is going away. To me, I don't think that the Thing is all that iconic, but it's also been around 42 years. I think John Carpenter is iconic. So it really comes down to me to horror. And like you, Scott, the Thing is much scarier to me than Slenderman. So my vote going to John Carpenter's The Thing.
Noise.
All right. Well, that moves The Thing forward. And up next, we have The Other Mother from Coraline versus the Xenomorph from Alien and Aliens and Alien vs. Predator and Alien Returns, Alien for Electric for Millar. All those movies.
Yeah. I think so this is going to be another example where I feel like you two are going to disappoint me, because to me, I don't think that this is all that difficult of a decision. I think that there is one very clearly more iconic and more terrifying competitor of these two.
Yeah, and they've got buttons for eyes, you know.
See? Disappointment.
Oh, were you going to go the other? You were going to go the other direction. Oh, okay.
So here's my point, and I think, Matt, you brought it up in one of our last episodes. You were saying that Alien 1 started out very horror based. It had a lot of jump scares. It was very terrifying. But as the movies progressed, like the Predator got a little bit more slapsticky, and the friend of my, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and it became a little bit like they became the good guys. But you can't really say that about the Xenomorphs. The Xenomorphs, through all the movies, have been terrifying and the enemy. They are absolutely horrific. Like the signature skulls and the mouth within the mouth and the drool coming out. And think about it in real life. If you were to come up on an alien, like, A, you're probably fucked. But B, let's say that you have one of those Space Marine rifles and you decide to shoot it and it's a little too close. Guess what? Even if you hurt it, it's still going to be like, fuck you, have acid blood. Like, the face huggers, like, coming up, fucking putting a baby alien in your chest and having it eat its way out of you, that's terrifying. That brings way more terror than button eyes.
I don't know. It sounds a little far-fetched to me.
It's not. Now hold on. If you want to talk about like in real life, if you came across your mother
Yeah.
in your home,
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that was different about her was that her eyes looked odd.
Yeah.
but she's cooking you dinner. She's tucking you in it. Like that shit's
and
terrifying.
her personality is completely different.
Well, kind of. I mean, at first though, it's pretty nice, right? And then she slowly starts to try to take Coraline's energy and keep her trapped. And like,
I think there's something incredibly terrifying about taking advantage of somebody's emotions
trust.
like that way. Yeah, exactly. That's terrifying.
Like, I think I'll go back to my argument in one of the first 2 episodes, which is if I come upon an alien, if I come upon a xenomorph, whether I have a fucking space marine rifle, a mech suit, whether I was trying to steamroll.
Nope, not gonna let you do it.
But if
I hope they gave consent first.
Consent is always important.
That's what the little mouth is.
All right, before this goes too far, if you are walking down an alley and you meet a xenomorph, you know you're dead. Period. But if you get kidnapped by a doppelganger of your mother or of anybody,
you're going to be mentally tortured for an extended period of time and then dead. Xenomorph is boom, done. All your problems are solved. The other mother is just the beginning.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
Just one question. The other mother, what movie did that come from?
Coraline.
Who was the protagonist?
Coraline.
What do you mean?
Coraline.
Yeah.
So you're going to tell me that you would be more nervous about impacting something that a young girl could get away from and not the xenomorphs that are decimating fucking elite fighting forces?
We don't know that she got away. There is speculation that she is still stuck in that other reality because at the end of that movie, there's a birthday cake.
Yeah.
And the writing on the birthday cake, she loops the I, which the real life mother does not do. Their handwriting is different. And that looped I would indicate the other mother wrote it. She did not escape.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole Coraline wiki. The Beldam, also known as the other mother, I know, right, is the main antagonist in the 2002 book Coraline, as well as the movie of the same name. Essentially, powers, abilities, and knowledge. So, natural, powerful entity capable of many powers and abilities, possibly due to witchcraft and control over the other world. Shape-shifting. Creation, being able to create life, like copies of other people, pocket dimensions, selective visibility, phonokinesis, like being able to, basically take control of animals. Fauna.
Okay.
Then you have all the powers of the other world itself. So like there's a ton more potential danger in my eyes in terms of just the breadth of things that the other mother can do to you. Whereas the xenomorph, again, you're just dead. I think it's time for a vote. Dan, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I'm going with Xenomorph. I'm sorry. There is no way that the one movie with the one character is going to outmatch the classic, iconic Xenomorph.
All right.
Okay, if you say so.
Scott, do you want to go next?
Do
you want me to go next?
You go next.
All right. I think, realistically, because that's what this is, Dan, it's real life. The xenomorph is so much more iconic than the other mother. There's nothing that can be done, but we have to try. So I'm going to vote for the xenomorph as well.
Damn it. That just means
yes!
My vote for a xenomorph is irrelevant because we were already in consensus. Like, yeah, there's no debate here.
God.
I mean, of course we have to talk about it. And you came in so strong that Matt and I locked eyes, and there was a moment.
We knew.
And then after that moment, we agreed we had to fuck with you.
I mean, but realistically, the other mother is terrifying. Like that whole concept, absolutely terrifying.
Not as scary as how your finger tasted in that moment, but we'll talk about that later.
I think if you took the concept of Coraline and actually wanted to make it a horror movie instead of a child-friendly movie, that shit would be fucking terrifying.
Man,
Maybe when it hits public domain.
Hey,
Yeah.
so it's an opportunity.
TM. That's script number 4.
All
All right.
fellas.
Cool. So that finishes us off on the creature side, right?
Mhm.
Before we hop over to slashers, let's take a quick break for ads. This is where I'd put my ads if I had any. All right, we're back. Moving on to I'll have you know that during Dan's really long rant about Xenomorph, I definitely spaced out and stopped listening for a moment because I thought about doing that gag. Moving into the slashers category, he was so passionate. We've got Michael Myers versus Freddy Krueger, Ghostface versus Jason Voorhees. Which one do you guys want to do first?
Man, both of these are tough. I don't really want to debate either of them.
Well, I think that it's important that we do, right?
If it's gonna get
kind of the show.
if it's gonna get heated anywhere in this bracket, I feel like it might be right here.
I do have opinions. So let's
Do
start.
you?
Let's start with just generally speaking.
It'd be a pretty shitty show if you didn't.
Let's start with Michael Myers versus Freddy Krueger.
Okay.
I think you have two characters here that are the pinnacle, right? The straight up columns, one of the pillars of horror, period. And that's why it has its own division. That's why slashers is its own category. It's its own subgenre of horror movies. And Freddy and Michael Myers hold that spot. Like they're always battling for that top position, right? For the top of the ladder.
Yeah. Not to jump ahead, but in the next matchup we'll talk about Ghostface. That movie, that character is fully inspired by, for being honest, all three of his competitors in this bracket. Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger, of course, being top of that list. Or right at it anyway.
Yeah.
So I think what it comes down to for me, I feel like all of these, I feel like Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger, they have a very similar level of horror.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we almost have to go weighted more towards icon. What is more iconic between these two?
I would say that they're really pretty even keel on that too.
So I would actually say like their icon levels are pretty similar, too similar to differentiate. I mean, they've both had incredibly long runs. They were both super popular in the 80s and made comebacks more recently. Michael Myers maybe a bit more successful of a comeback than the most recent Freddy Krueger movie.
Yeah.
But dude, Robert Englund like absolutely crushed that role, and it's something that he is still iconic for, that one role. And his role in Zombie Strippers.
Yeah, but I think it's important to talk about. Like, it's not, and don't get me wrong.
It's important we talk about Zombie Strippers.
Robert Englund's great, and he's been in a ton of other TV shows and movies, parodying himself. Most recently, what comes to mind is Stranger Things. In a way, right? Kind of a parody of that same type of character when he talks about, spoiler alert, the bad guy, the main bad guy that I can't think of the name of.
I can't.
But it's not just Robert Englund, right? Like Robert Englund was the main one, but Jackie Earle Haley did some Freddy in 2 or 3 of the movies, something around there.
I think the big benefit with Michael Myers, though, is that being a masked character, he can be played by anyone. He can go on forever and ever and ever. Freddy Krueger, like, I don't know, changing the actor
mid-franchise.
Yeah, mid-franchise. It's either got to be a reboot or it's nothing, you know?
Yeah, that's
trying to. Cents, I don't know.
That's trying to take, I don't know, just pulling off the top of my head, Henry Cavill out of The Witcher and just replacing him with a Hemsworth and saying, no one will notice.
Yeah,
It
it's a terrible
changes it.
decision. Yeah.
Yeah. It fucks with the reality.
But going back to this competition, again, I think their iconic levels are pretty flat, right, against each other. So to me, it goes down to which one is more horrific, and that's a tough matchup. Freddy Krueger can get you while you sleep, and I think that in and of itself brings a whole level of mental, scared. Like, imagine having to keep yourself awake knowing that if you fall asleep, you would die. First day, probably wouldn't be that bad. Second day, getting a little tough. Third day, then you start to go through sleep deprivation. You start to hallucinate. Fourth day, you're like going insane, all because you can't sleep because you will die.
Isn't the
And
most someone's ever made it like 8 days and then they died?
yeah, your body
It's not,
literally
yeah.
cannot function without sleep. So that's a whole other level of terrifying.
Yeah.
It, Michael Myers, at least and yes, I know that there's a way that you can defeat Jason or Freddy in the Dreamland, but that's really fucking difficult. And you're doing it while you're sleep deprived, which makes it even more difficult.
But how much sleep are you going to get if Michael Myers is chasing you?
I
Well,
mean,
and
that's fair.
I think that the big difference, and I don't know enough about the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, so please let me know if I'm wrong. I don't know how many recurring characters there have been throughout that series, right? Whereas Michael Myers, Jamie Lee Curtis is in most of those movies, and he's straight up just chasing her for like 30 plus years, right? Like he holds a grudge like no one else. So
Mm-hmm.
even when you think you've defeated him, he comes back 5 years later, 10 years later, and he's like, all right, now I'm here for you and your grandchildren. Like I think that holds its own kind of like special, I mean, horror for lack of a better way of putting it. Like,
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like the movies themselves. What's really tough for me is the movies themselves are, I think, very equal in both quality of horror and the icon level of these are both very equal. I think they're very equal across both of these categories. I think the only way to differentiate is like which one, kind of what Dan was saying, which one is, if you were to face it in reality, which one would be more terrifying? I Freddy Krueger's like, you know, inability to be confronted in the real life is pretty freaking terrifying. Like his ability to just get to anyone anytime. But
He's also immortal. Just throwing that out there. So even if you stop him, it's literally temporary.
yeah, I don't know. I do feel like, I said they're pretty equal, but I do feel like Mike Myers' icon level is just maybe a hair more impactful than Freddy Krueger's.
and
But
that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like I feel like Michael Myers holding the title of Halloween and doing it
yeah,
in a way that people look forward to more and more. Like there, what is synonymous with Halloween more than Michael Myers?
damn, when you really think about it, it was a bold ass move to name that movie Halloween, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Because if you had fucked that up,
that'd be like that would truly be like naming a movie Easter and hoping that it usurps the Easter holiday,
yeah.
basically.
Hmm. But I mean, Freddy is pretty freaking iconic too. I mean, you see people all the time with the gloves, and you know that striped sweater.
Yeah.
Oof,
You do,
this is a
and
tough one.
it is very much a tough one. But I do think, for me, I'll throw my vote out. It's
Ooh,
the song, it's the butcher knife, and it's the mask. Michael Myers gets my vote for most iconic here.
drawing a line in the sand. All right, Dan, how do you feel? Do you feel definitive about any of these choices? Or are you on the fence?
I mean, there's this whole bracket this specific section, there's none of these votes that will make me feel good. I think all of these are worthy competitors. But in this specific matchup, I think Freddy Krueger, you might be right about him not being as iconic as Michael Myers. But I think the horror aspect makes up for it, because if I need to get away from Michael Myers, planes, trains, or automobiles is going to be my best bet, and then I'm gone, right? As long as I can get enough distance between me and Michael Myers, I'm okay. Freddy Krueger, on the other hand, there is no escape. If he is after you, you cannot escape. He is immortal. He will chase you in your dreams, and there's nothing that you can do. To me, that lack of being able to sleep, that fear of knowing that if I sleep, I die, that's awful. That's an awful thing to live with. My vote's Freddy Krueger.
All right, Scoopalicious. This comes back to you.
Fuck, man. You guys had to tie it up. I'll tell you what, where I'm really at, and this is going to sound corny, but my mind is telling me Mike Myers is telling me Freddy Krueger, because everything Dan just said makes a lot of logical sense. You can't get away. Like you said, once his eyes are set on you, you're fucked. You can't get away from him. There's no distance you can put or anything like that that's going to save you from him.
And if I may interject, think about...
No, you may not. Okay. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Think about what?
I was going to say, you're running from Freddy Krueger. You're trying to keep yourself awake. You accidentally fall asleep. And in your dream, your wife and children come up to you. You don't know it's a dream, but one of them is Freddy Krueger.
You know how to push Scott's buttons.
Hold on a second. I was already agreeing with you.
Yeah.
And then you had to go and say fucked up shit like that. And now I don't want to agree with you anymore.
You got to know your audience. Know your
audience. Seriously.
I thought I did. That's why I went that direction.
No, you fucked up. My heart, though, says Michael Myers. There is something about that slight advantage that he has on the icon side that, when I think Halloween, I think spooky season. Like that mask comes to mind for me first before anything Freddy Krueger does. So it's like a battle between like my head and my heart about which way I want to go. But this little finger is telling me that I'm going to have to go Mike Myers because Dan pissed me off.
I mean, look, there's not a wrong decision out of these two. It's you're talking about the most iconic.
Oh. Yeah, so on that silent note, just stop talking. Yeah, no. Michael Myers moves on. I agree, Dan. I think this may be one of the strongest groups of four that we've seen in bracketology history, all 37 years of it. But that takes us to our last matchup of the day. Scott?
Oh, geez. This is the one I don't want to do, because I feel like there's going to be tension. We have Ghostface versus Jason Voorhees.
All right, tell me your tension, Scott.
This is me projecting, is what this is, because I know that, at least I suspect that I'm going to have a fairly strong opinion for this one, and that I have a feeling I might be in the minority here. Because I don't think that either one of you are as big a fans of the Scream movies as I am. And I think that Ghostface, again, knowing that he got an inspiration, the character, how do I put it? The within the meta of the movie, the characters are inspired by the other three characters in this list: Mike Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees. He was a late addition to this category. Chronologically, but the growth and the longevity and the cultural impact, I think, makes him possibly the most iconic out of the four. And his horror level, I know. And his horror level, I feel like, is right on par, because you get with him a good mix of the jump scares and the anticipation building up to that, as well as some of the psychological, because you never know who it is. That's my, Jason deserves tons of flowers, right? And I'm going to count on one of you guys to talk about why, because I know I'm going to be disagreed with.
Dude, look, Jason Voorhees is like one of the progenitors of the slasher franchise.
And I knew it would be Dan.
Dude, you want to talk about not just iconic parts of a movie, like the that is iconic, and that is something that has been used in cinema, like all kinds of stuff through the years.
So is that Jason Voorhees breathing under his mask? Is that what that is? Is he making that sound as he's walking around chasing people?
It is. Look, somebody brought up the song with Michael Myers. You can count that towards Jason Voorhees.
That's just a soundtrack, brother. That's not the character.
The mask, the face under the mask, the mom situation from the very first, movie where the mom is actually the serial killer. Like the fact that Jason is basically immortal.
Spoiler alert.
He can't. Oh, yeah. Sorry if you haven't seen that 40-year-old movie. Spoiler alert. He basically cannot die. Whereas Ghostface, yes, I think the Ghostface iconography with the mask is super high. It is everywhere. But so is the Jason mask. That is everywhere and has been for a much longer period of time. But in terms of horror, Ghostface isn't that scary. Ghostface isn't the same person. It's multiple people donning one mask.
It's an idea.
But that's not all that scary. Like, it's just a person being deceitful, trying to kill people.
But doesn't that make it?
Voorhees is a fucking monster, bro.
But doesn't that to some degree make it more terrifying because it's grounded in a reality that can happen? That can happen, right? Jason Voorhees can't happen. There are so many improbable, inexplicable things that happened to Jason in the Jason movies. He would have been dead 17 sequels ago. There's no fucking way that the Jason Voorhees shit has any basis in a reality that there's not at least some degree of what is that called when you have to separate yourself from the reality of it? Why am I blanking on that term?
Suspension of disbelief.
Thank you. You have to have suspension of disbelief. I'm not saying that it's a probable thing that the loony bins open up the way that they do in the Scream movies, but is it possible? Is it grounded in a reality where these things can happen? Yes, absolutely. Especially the first movie. A couple of teenagers in the suburbs just fucking snap because they've watched one too many horror movies. Okay, maybe not necessarily the media influence there, but yes, that shit can happen. I think that adds a level of horror to the Scream franchise and to Ghostface that none of the other three people in this division have.
I think that there's an argument that could be made for both of these characters, but
sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
I apologize.
No, you have to finish.
No. I'm ashamed of interrupting you.
That's the rule of the podcast. Remember when you did that to me?
No, but I believe it. Now I don't remember what I was going to say anyway. Sorry. Go ahead.
But going and turning your argument on its head, the first Friday the 13th movie, Jason's just a normal guy that is a shut-in in the woods. Like, he's not an unstoppable monster. He's not anything other than a victimized child who grew up eating nothing but squirrels and mushrooms. Like,
getting bullied.
Exactly, right? Like a victimized person who then takes it out on others, especially once his mom dies. The idea behind Jason Voorhees obviously evolves a ton over the Friday the 13th movies, but the same could be said in a lot of ways about Ghostface, right? Where maybe there's a character who you thought died and comes back 3 movies later. There's something about both of these where there's a suspension of disbelief that needs to happen.
I think we can't bring reality into this one specific matchup
No,
when
no, no.
literally everything on this list requires, at some level, a suspension of disbelief.
We were just talking about reality in the last matchup. We were saying that the Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger were so close in both the horror side and the icon side. We had to think about what it would be like to face them in reality. We have to think about the same thing here. Okay, we have to talk about this as a reality.
And which one of these two, if you had Ghostface coming at you and Jason Voorhees coming at you, which one do you think you could punch in the face and possibly win against?
I'm not going to try and punch either one in the face. If they're coming at me, my fight or flight's going to kick in. And I'll tell you what, I'm a flight kind of guy. Ghostface is running at me with those robes going in the back and a fucking knife in his hand like a psychopath. Yeah, nah, I'm out, bro. Deuces. I'm running for the first door I can find. Same thing with Jason. I mean, yeah, sure. I guess I get your point. Ghostface is just a dude. But again, that goes back to the thing I'm talking about. Like, for me, that potential reality is more terrifying than, I mean, Matt, I get your point. He was a basic person, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the overall character of Jason, which was evolved into something that doesn't exist. Granted, none of the other things in this list do either, but but I'm saying
that's what Dan was getting at earlier.
Yeah, you're being awful selective with that card.
But
Scott.
what I'm saying though is yes, because Ghostface is the only one that can. It's the only one that can exist. And again, back to my original point, that iconography, that mask, that line, what's your favorite scary movie? Like, there's so much stronger, especially in the time frame that it's had to do it. It has caught up and in my eyes surpassed Jason Voorhees from an iconic standpoint.
All right. Well, I think
women on TikTok aren't fantasizing about their husbands putting on Jason masks and trying to quote unquote kidnap them. They're fans of the Ghostface mask. I don't know if you guys are on that TikTok, but there are women out there all about it.
I'm not.
Neither am I.
Can we get your vote, you perv?
Scott's going to be fantasizing about being kidnapped by somebody wearing the Ghostface mask.
Ashley, you know what happens on his birthday next year.
I mean, again, I'm not trying to take anything away from Jason. He definitely is a horror icon. He is one, for sure. If there was a Mount Rushmore of horror icons, he would be on it. But the first face you'd see before his, at the very least, is, in my opinion, Ghostface. I think that icon is too strong. Ghostface.
All right. Daniel?
Look, the first Friday the 13th movie, and you guys gave flowers for Michael Myers for claiming Halloween. Also got to give Jason Voorhees flowers for claiming Friday the 13th. First Friday the 13th came out in 1980. That is 44 years ago, and it is just as strong right now. That I saw a sticker of the Jason Voorhees mask on the back of a car driving to work yesterday. It is just as iconic. That sound is just as iconic, and it has lasted a hell of a lot longer than Ghostface. So I will say that maybe Ghostface is equal on an iconic level because that mask is so famous. There's been a ton of different Ghostface. There is only one Jason Voorhees.
Dan, I don't want to hurt your feelings when I say this, but just because it's older doesn't make it better.
It makes it it last the test of time, and that is the only true test. But if you can remain relevant for that long, that's staying power.
But isn't there also something to be said about reaching that level of popularity in less time? If you want to talk about time, then that goes both ways, brother.
I don't think that...
And just because you're the oldest, just because it's the oldest doesn't make it better.
Look, I don't think Ghostface has reached that level of iconography
You
yet.
just said they were at equal level of
I was
iconography.
giving it.
You
I was
just
being.
said that.
I
All
was
right,
being
okay.
gracious, but it does not. That's not the way I feel.
No, you're
Jason
just being
Voorhees
gracious.
is
Okay.
way more
Let's
iconic.
get your official vote, Dan.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Jason Voorhees, all the
Yeah.
way. Ghostface is good, but he's not as nearly as good as Jason.
All right. So this comes to me, to break the tie. Scott, do you remember on the east side of this bracket with the xenomorph versus the other mother?
Yeah.
Yeah. This isn't that. Jason moves on.
Yeah. Okay. That's
I mean, the fact of the matter is, to me, of all the movie franchises that are on here, as Dan, look, as of all the movie franchises that are on this bracket, Friday the 13th, I loved. I loved Friday the 13th. Like it connected with me, and it's one of those that I can watch, even though there are jump scares, even though there are other parts. And I think part of it to me, is the ability to relate to that character, right? To see devil's advocate for the villain, because he was bullied and he was pushed into the water, he was drowned. Plus I grew up going to like summer camp and stuff, and so that always just, yeah, that whole setting speaks to me.
Can I just point out real quick? You guys are boring as fuck. Can you look at what our next matchup's going to be now? Hey guys, next time we come back to this, you get to look forward to Mike Myers versus Jason Voorhees, a giant masked man who's seemingly invincible versus a giant masked man who's seemingly invincible. Super excited to talk about that diverse group. God, you guys are boring and stupid.
All right, so here's the thing.
You can say that, but we based our vote on the most iconic and the most horrific. Those are the winners.
Before I have to just mute everybody else on this call, I do look, it already came up at some point in this episode. These two fucks hold grudges like your grandma who hates her neighbor from 74 years ago. Like they are still fighting over Bob Barker and SpongeBob.
Well, I thought you were talking about Mike Myers and Jason.
So we have begun to see the beginnings of a feud, and it is Dangle versus Scootamus.
Oh, you fucking assholes. That was an episode of a podcast. What do we have to look forward to next week?
Next week, we will get into our Eerie 8, where we will talk about... Yeah, that came right off the dome. You like that?
Yeah. Good job. You still suck, but good job.
Matt, I think you're so awesome. Dude,
look, fuck all of you guys. In the Universal Monsters, we have the two most iconic, The Mummy versus Dracula. That one is going to be a tale for the ages. In the paranormal, some fucking how, we have Chucky versus Pennywise.
Yeah, we might have messed up somewhere along the lines there.
In the creatures, we will talk about The Thing versus the Xenomorph. And then in the slashers, we will see the king of the slashers, Michael Myers, versus his counterpart, Jason Voorhees.
Boring. Anyway, 3/4 of a good episode to look forward to next week. As I mentioned earlier, if you haven't already, please check us out on all the social medias. We are at Bracketology, BRACKETALLOGY. We're on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Twitch. I don't know, we're on all of them. Find us on there. What else we got?
Well, it'll be right next to those videos Scott was talking about with the Scream mask on the TikTok. We also want to thank Carl Casey at White Bat Audio for our Halloween-themed music, Sanity Unravels. That's going to go through the end of this bracket.
Sweet. Awesome. That's it, guys. I think that's all of it, right? Yeah. And we're forgetting anything? I don't think so. Mm-mm. All right. For this episode, once again, I was the thing under your bed, Scott Grubb.
I've been hiding the whole time. I'm Matt.
And I'm the happiest ghoul, Dan DeFone.
Bye-bye.